Sunday, November 2nd, 2025, AGNDD intelliReport topic. Hurricane Melissa, November 1st update. Please pardon any visual and informational inaccuracies in this entirely AI-generated article-based video. Article Hurricane Melissa taken directly from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. November 1st, 2025, update on Hurricane Melissa and its impact. This article is about the 2025 Atlantic hurricane. For other storms of the same name, see list of storms named Melissa. Hurricane Melissa is an active extratropical cyclone which was formerly an extremely powerful and destructive tropical cyclone which made landfall in Jamaica and Cuba in October 2025. The 13th named storm, 5th hurricane, 4th major hurricane, and 3rd Category 5 hurricane of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, Melissa is currently the strongest tropical cyclone worldwide in 2025 and is tied with the 1935 Labor Day hurricane as the most intense landfalling Atlantic hurricane and 3rd most intense Atlantic hurricane overall by central pressure. Melissa formed from a tropical wave that was first monitored for development on October 16, 2025. The wave originated from West Africa, traveled from the central Atlantic to the Windward Islands, and then moved quickly westward into the Caribbean Sea, where it slowed down and developed into Tropical Storm Melissa on October 21st. Weak steering currents and moderate wind shear kept Melissa meandering and disorganized for the next few days as it slowly moved northwest. Over time, Melissa became better organized and from October 25th to 27 rapidly intensified into a Category 5 hurricane before making landfall near New Hope, Jamaica at its peak intensity on October 28th. Melissa emerged from the north coast of Jamaica later that day, weakened, and made landfall near Chivirico, Cuba the next day. Melissa weakened to a Category 1 hurricane after the landfall, approached Bermuda as a Category 2 hurricane, then again weakened before becoming a hurricane force extratropical low on October 31st northeast of Bermuda. As of November 2nd, at least 67 deaths have been attributed to Melissa, including 30 from flooding and landslides in Haiti and 31 in Jamaica. Monetary losses are currently unknown. Meteorological history. On October 16, 2025, the National Hurricane Center began monitoring a westward-moving tropical wave for potential development. On October 19th, the wave moved through the Windward Islands and into the Caribbean Sea. The disturbance moved quickly westward, then slowed significantly, providing an opportunity for development of a well-defined center and organized deep convection early on October 21st, becoming Tropical Storm Melissa. On account of weak steering currents, Melissa moved slowly and erratically west to northwest over the very warm waters of the central Caribbean, unable to strengthen appreciably due to westerly wind shear. On October 23rd, the wind shear began to weaken, enabling convection to begin developing in the direction of the shear from the storm center. As a result, Melissa became better aligned vertically, turning more northward, and strengthened the following day. Enabled by very favorable conditions, Melissa rapidly intensified on October 25th. Its maximum sustained winds increased from 70 miles per hour, 115 kilometers per h, to 140 miles per hour, 225 kilometers per h, in 18 hours. After a brief pause, intensification resumed, and while moving generally westward, Melissa attained Category 5 status early on October 27th. After turning north-northeastward, the system later attained maximum sustained winds of 185 miles per hour, 295 kilometers per h, and a minimum central pressure of 892 mbar, HPA 26.93 INHG, about 45 miles, 70 kilometers, south-southeast of Negril, Jamaica, the next morning. At 17 o'clock UTC, the storm made landfall near New Hope in Westmoreland Parish at its peak intensity. The hurricane weakened inland over the mountains and emerged off Jamaica's north coast into the Caribbean at Category 4 strength, headed toward Cuba. The system then further weakened to a Category 3 hurricane soon thereafter. After briefly re-strengthening to Category 4 with sustained winds of 130 miles per hour, 210 kilometers per h, the hurricane made landfall in eastern Cuba at 7:10 UTC on October 29th, about 20 miles, 30 kilometers, east of Chivirico, with sustained Category 3 winds of 120 miles per hour, 195 kilometers per h. Inland, the rugged terrain of Cuba led to additional weakening, and the storm's sustained winds falling to low-end Category 2 strength by the time Melissa moved back offshore into the Atlantic Ocean 8 hours later. The system then weakened to Category 1 strength while beginning to accelerate toward the northeast, passing near Long Island while traversing the Bahamas that same afternoon. Late that day, the storm re-strengthened once more to Category 2 intensity, attaining sustained winds of 105 miles per hour, 165 kilometers per h, as it headed towards Bermuda on the morning of October 30th. Increasing wind shear and decreasing sea surface temperatures caused Melissa to commence extratropical transition early on October 31st, and to weaken again to Category 1 strength as it passed near Bermuda. Melissa completed its transition into a hurricane-force extratropical cyclone that same day. Records and distinctions. Globally, the strongest tropical cyclone of 2025. Globally, the highest wind gust ever measured by dropsonde, 252 miles per hour, 406 kilometers per h, 219 kN, released by NOAA hurricane hunters at an altitude of 657 feet, 200 m, tied with the 1935 Labor Day hurricane as the third most intense Atlantic hurricane on record in terms of lowest barometric pressure, behind Hurricanes Wilma and Gilbert, and tied with Hurricanes Wilma, Gilbert Dorian, and the 1935 Labor Day hurricane as the second most intense Atlantic hurricane in terms of 1-minute sustained wind speeds, behind Hurricane Allen. Tied with the 1935 Labor Day hurricane for most intense Atlantic hurricanes at landfall in terms of lowest barometric pressure, and with the 1935 Labor Day hurricane and Hurricane Dorian for the strongest landfalling hurricane in the Atlantic in terms of maximum sustained winds, also the strongest tropical cyclone to make landfall in Jamaica on record. Unusually for a storm of such high intensity, Melissa never underwent an eye wall replacement cycle, allowing it to sustain its high intensity for a prolonged period, according to several meteorologists. Preparations. Greater Antilles. On October 21st, a hurricane watch was issued for southern portions of Haiti, while a tropical storm watch was issued for Jamaica. Jamaica's watch was upgraded to a hurricane watch and tropical storm warning on October 23rd. The next day it was upgraded to a hurricane warning. A tropical storm warning was added to the southern portions of Haiti, also on October 23rd. The Margaritaville at Sea Islander rerouted from stops on Grand Cayman and Jamaica to Belize and Honduras. The Disney Treasure was rerouted from Tortola and St. Thomas to Cozumel, and Disney Wish changed its schedule at Castaway Cay to allow for the Treasure's route change. 167 flights were canceled in the Greater Antilles in airports in the Bahamas, Barbados, Haiti, Jamaica, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Puerto Rico. The U.S. National Weather Service in Puerto Rico issued a flood warning for several municipalities due to potential heavy rains from the outer bands of Melissa on October 22nd. Dominican Republic. 4 shelters were opened in San Juan, San Cristobal, and the National District, and 61 people sought sheltering. 12 provinces were placed under red alert. Around 90 people evacuated Sayona Island. Jamaica. The Ministry of Transportation of Jamaica deployed 30 buses for the emergency situation in Portmore, Spanish Town, Rockfort, and Montego Bay. The National Water Commission mobilized teams and equipment. The University of the West Indies ordered the evacuation of its students in Mona, and graduation ceremonies at the Mona campus were postponed. Sandy Gully in St. Andrew was desilted as the storm approached. The National Water Commission gave access to clean drinking water to over 548,000 people in preparation for the arrival of Melissa. On October 24th, public institutions including the National Gallery of Art and the Bob Marley Museum announced their closures indefinitely. On October 25th, all airports were shut down. Services and transportation associated with the Jamaica Urban Transit Company were suspended. Cayman Islands. The government of the Cayman Islands provided sandbags for citizens. Cayman Airways waived change of flight fees in relation to Melissa's approach. All touristic diving operations ceased on the islands of Little Cayman and Cayman Brac on October 24th. Cuba. President Miguel Diaz-Canel reported that 735,000 people were evacuated in the country's eastern regions. Additionally, the United States Navy began evacuating several hundred people, including all non-mission essential U.S. citizens from Guantanamo Bay Naval Base to Florida. Elsewhere, on October 17th, a yellow adverse weather alert was issued for Trinidad and Tobago as the precursor of Melissa approached. On October 18th, a yellow alert was also issued in Martinique. That same day, a flash flood warning was issued in Barbados. In Curaçao, Prime Minister Guilmar Pisas closed schools on the island to allow for greater flexibility in the operation of emergency services. Colombia issued yellow alerts along its Atlantic coast for rough seas. Hurricane warnings were made for the central and southwest Bahamas, while a tropical storm warning was made for the Turks and Caicos Islands. Evacuation orders were made for Acklins, Crooked Island, Inagua, Long Cay, Mayaguana, and Ragged Island. The British Ministry of Defence deployed 8 people and the HMS Trent to the Turks and Caicos Islands to aid with preparations and relief. Several members of the Parliament of the Turks and Caicos Islands and the Governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands distributed food and sandbags to their constituents. Generators were filled and tested prior to the storm, and 2 pump stations were activated. A hurricane warning was issued for Bermuda. The Causeway, buses, and L.F. Wade International Airport were closed on the evening of October 30th and reopened October 31st. Several ferry routes were closed on October 30th, and all were closed on October 31st. Cedar Bridge Academy opened as a shelter on October 30th. Government offices closed on October 30th. Impact. Lesser Antilles. Winds gusted as high as 45 miles per hour, 74 kilometers per h, were recorded on October 19th at Barbados's Grantley Adams International Airport during heavy rain squalls. Other peak gusts included 32 miles per hour, 52 kilometers per h at St. Lucia, and 37 miles per hour, 61 kilometers per h at Martinique. Puerto Rico. Melissa's outer rain bands resulted in heavy rainfall in Guanica on October 24th, affecting nearly 400 families and causing damage to buildings and infrastructure. Haiti. In Haiti, 30 people were killed and 20 were missing. Deaths include 3 from a landslide near Port-au-Prince, another by a falling tree in Marigot, and 25 after a river burst its banks in Petit Goave, while 15 others were injured by a collapsing wall in Artibonite Department. At least 450 homes were damaged across the country. Dominican Republic. Across the country, more than 1.1 million people were without water supply after heavy rainfall and flooding disrupted water supply systems, including in Pedro Brand, Los Alcarrizos, and Santo Domingo Oeste. It was reported that 56 aqueducts were out of service. A lane of a road in Maria Trinidad Sanchez collapsed. A facade fell off of a hospital in Constanza due to rains, leading to the hospital suspending operations. A 71-year-old man died after being swept away by a swollen river in Santo Domingo Norte, while a child in Los Mameyes went missing during the heavy rainfall. A total of 4 people were reported dead across the country. Jamaica. By October 27th, prior to Melissa's landfall on Jamaica, 3 people in St. Elizabeth, St. Catherine, and Hanover parishes died of indirect causes, and 13 others were injured while preparing for the hurricane. Flooding was reported in Old Harbor, while multiple communities in St. Elizabeth Parish had lost power by 6 o'clock local time. By 15 o'clock UTC, about 200,000 customers, or 35% of Jamaica's homes and businesses, were left without power. Around 52,000 Jamaica Public Service customers lost power as Melissa approached the island. This number rose to 530,000 people after Melissa struck the island. The parishes of St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, St. James, Trelawney, and Hanover, which received the worst of Melissa's impacts, lost all communication. Hurricane Melissa made landfall in New Hope, Westmoreland, as an extremely powerful Category 5 hurricane. Extensive damage was reported in St. Elizabeth, with the parish described as being underwater. Villages in the parish were reportedly obliterated, with entire buildings collapsing. Severe flooding was reported in several locations, including Mandeville, where houses were submerged up to their roofs in water. A BBC journalist described the town as being flattened by the hurricane. Severe flooding was also reported in Alligator Pond. The principal of St. Elizabeth Technical High School said the school had suffered severe damage, including lost roofs.
We are speechless, so to speak. In other words, we are unfortunately having a little AI voice snafu at the moment. Pardon the inconvenience and thank you for your understanding.
Thank you for watching this AGNDD intelliReport, dear viewers. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell button to get notified during new uploads. And make sure to tune in next time. Stay safe and healthy. Cheers.